Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Minisforum HX100G. Now we've seen this same design from the company in the past in a couple of their mini PCs. This is coming to us from their Neptune series. But the HX100G is definitely the most powerful out of the bunch because we've got an upgraded CPU and an upgraded GPU. This is a full-fledged mini gaming PC with a dedicated GPU. We'll definitely dive into the specs and some testing in just a bit. But when it comes to the overall design, nothing much has changed here from their older HX models. I personally do like the way they've got this laid out. I've always thought it was one of the best looking mini gaming PCs on the market. But I do kind of wish they would have offered at least one more color variant, like a white version, even with that carbon fiber overlay still on it, would have looked absolutely amazing. Inside of the box, along with the HX100G mini gaming PC, we're also going to get a carbon fiber vertical stand. Now, you don't have to utilize this if you don't want to. The PC will sit vertically on the desk. And we've also got a 260 watt power supply, and as you can see, it's a 4-prong power supply. Since we've got a dedicated GPU here, it does need a little extra than the other mini PCs on the market. And just to give you a quick look here, when it's set up in the vertical stand, I think it does look really good. But again, if you don't like the vertical orientation or you don't have enough room, it's got the rubber overlays so it can sit horizontally on the desk. Personally, I've just always kept it with that carbon fiber vertical stand because I do think it looks absolutely amazing like this. When it comes to I/O, up front here, we've got one USB 3.1 Gen 1 port. This is a full-size port up top. 2 audio jacks, so we've got microphone jack and a headphone jack, and USB Type-C 3.2 Gen 1. And of course, moving around back, we've got our 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, another full-size USB 3.1 port, plus we've got 2 full-size USB 3.2 ports, dual full-size HDMI, and 2 USB 4 ports. So this will do a total of 4 displays out. We can utilize both HDMI ports and both of those USB 4 ports around back. As for upgradability, basically with these mini PCs, the only thing we can really take care of is adding more RAM and more storage. With this, we do get 2 M.2 slots. One of them will be populated if you don't go with the bare bones model. I've got a 1TB drive in here, but we can always add another M.2 drive. This does utilize SODIMM DDR5 running in dual channel, and I've got 32 gigs here with this unit. And when it comes to the overall specs of the new Minisforum Neptune HX100G, for the CPU, we've got the Ryzen 7 7840HS. 8 cores, 16 threads, all of this is based on Zen 4. Base clock of 3.8 GHz with a boost up to 5.1. With that, we also get the Radeon 780M iGPU, but since we've got a dedicated GPU, we're not going to be utilizing that for gaming, because this comes packed with an AMD Radeon RX 6650M with 8 GB of GDDR6 VRAM, 1792 stream processors, and a max boost clock up to 2470 MHz. Needless to say, this is going to put out a lot more performance than an iGPU, but we can also add up to 64 GB of SODIMM DDR5 here at up to 5600 megatransfers per second. We saw it has 2 M.2 2280 slots. We've also got Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and this is running Windows 11 out of the box. Okay, so here we are. Been up and running for a little while now. Got a bunch of stuff installed that we're going to be testing out, and yeah, I mean, this little thing is a rocket. As you can see, we've got that Ryzen 7 7840HS with the Radeon 780M graphics, but we don't really need to worry about those right now. 32 gigs of DDR5 at 5600 megatransfers per second. And of course, we've got the AMD Radeon RX 6650M with 8 gigs of VRAM. First thing I always like to take a look at is just TDP on that CPU. And of course, since we're working with a discrete GPU, we're also going to check that. But here's core temp. We've got our power right here. So this is CPU package power. Run a stress test with CPU-Z. Ooh, she jumped up to 70 watts. I'd say anywhere from 65 to 68. And of course, we don't really need that much power for the CPU while gaming here. If we had the iGPU in the equation, yeah, it would definitely run at 68, 70 watts all day while gaming. But we've got the DGPU, and that's the next thing I wanted to take a look at. So let's just go ahead and we'll max this sucker out. I mean, stress it out as much as possible. GPU power, So it looks like we've got a 100-watt RX 6650M in here. And in some other systems, I've seen this boost up to 120, but it looks like we've got that 100-watt version, which is more than enough here. And this should offer some really great 1080p gaming without any scaling. And if you don't mind using FSR, you could definitely take it up to high 1440p with some FSR. Now, first and foremost, with the G moniker at the end of the HX100G, this is a gaming machine, but it could definitely be used as an everyday desktop PC for photo editing, 4K video editing, web browsing. Basically, it'll handle any everyday task that you throw at it without any issue. We've got that 8-core Zen 4 CPU, 16 threads, and that dedicated GPU. Not a problem for this thing to turn into a full-fledged everyday PC. But I'm personally here for the gaming performance, but before we jump into it, I did want to show off some benchmarks that I ran on the HX100G. When it comes to Geekbench 6, we got a single core of 2,473, multi 12,377. Really putting down some good performance in single and multi, and it really comes down to this being able to boost up to that 68-70 watt range. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks, we've got 3D Mark Night Raid, 57,457. I know this is a lower end benchmark, but I like throwing it in just to kind of get an idea of how much more power we're pushing than an iGPU, kind of for my own reference. Taking a look at Firestrike, 21,311. And finally, we've got TimeSpy with a very respectable 8,552. So far, with the synthetics, not looking bad at all, but it would have been really nice if Minisforum went with that Ryzen 7000 APU, which we have here, and the RX 7600M. But they went with an RDNA 2-based 6000 series mobile GPU. Either way, I got a good feeling we're going to see some great gaming performance out of the HX100G. At the time of making this video, the game itself does not support FSR without mods, and with FSR, we could definitely go up to epic settings, but at epic, the way it is right now, we only had an average of 55. Either way, high still looks great for a game like this, and we are at 1080p over 60 FPS. It's definitely playable on this machine. Mortal Kombat 1 is another one I wanted to throw in here. Very high settings, 1080p, no FSR. When it comes to fighting games on a machine like this, everything on the market is going to run at full speed, 1080p. And if you wanted to go up to 1440 with this, we could definitely do it, but we have to drop some of the settings down and add a bit of FSR. Here's Horizon Zero Dawn, just using that built-in benchmark. Very high settings, so we're maxed out here at 1080p with no FSR whatsoever. By the end of this run, we had an average of 93 FPS. Looks like a lot of this stuff would work out pretty well at 1440 with some lower settings. Forza Motorsports was one that I was hoping would run really well, and it looks like, yeah, even without any FSR, high settings, 1080p, we're over 60. We actually got an average of 84 FPS. Not bad at all, and this is something I could definitely play on this machine without any issues. But I think we're going to be hard-pressed to go up to 1440 at even high settings. With this, FSR would definitely be a must. The game itself is just not very well optimized yet, and I was really hoping all of this would be fixed by now, but unfortunately it hasn't been. Next on the list, we've got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This is the only Call of Duty game I have. I would have tested the newer one, but I just used the built-in benchmark, 1080p, Ultra. FSR is set to balance. We had an average of 132 FPS. And finally, we've got Cyberpunk 2077, and this was pretty impressive given what we have here. We're at 1080, Ultra, FSR, defaults to auto. We're getting an average of 74 FPS.
This just don't make sense at all.
Another thing I always like to take a look at with these smaller form factor PCs is total system power consumption, because this could definitely come in handy for somebody who wants to buy a PC in a spot where, power costs more than other places. With this system, it does come with that 260 watt power supply. We're well under that. Idle, pulling around 22 watts from the wall. And by the way, I am using a kilowatt meter while I'm doing all of my testing. Average gaming jumps up to 167. And the maximum that I could get this to pull while maxing out that dedicated GPU and the CPU at the same time was 204 watts. When it comes down to it, the new Minisforum Neptune HX100G is their most powerful HX variant yet, and I'm sure down the road they might release something a bit more powerful, but I actually think that that's kind of the last hurrah for this form factor they got going on here. Personally, I do like it, and I could see them offering some color options down the road, but One thing I'd love to see with an upcoming mini gaming PC from them is an RX 7600 MXT. I think that that's a great 1440p card at high, maybe some FSR added into some higher end AAA games. But keeping the form factor small with a more powerful GPU would be nice. But either way you look at it, I mean, you can definitely play any AAA game on this at 1080p. Older stuff at 1440 is not going to be an issue with the new HX100G. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you're interested in learning a little more about this new mini PC from Minisforum, I'll leave some links down below. And if there's anything else you want to see running on this, be it more games or even a different operating system, i.e. Linux, let me know in the comments. And like always, thanks for watching.